It's been a long 24 hours. About 24 hours ago, I posted a video on my YouTube channel talking about how to make Dungeons & Dragons prep a little bit easier. And in that video I said that I wanted to post more regularly on the channel, but I didn't expect to be posting this soon after this video. However, there's been a lot going on in the D&D community, in the creator community specifically, and I feel like I want to talk about it and explain a couple of big changes that I've decided to sort of preemptively bring about across all of my platforms. First things first, the OGL, or OGL 1.1, or whatever we're calling it. This is the leaked document which shows how the Open Gaming License may be changed by Wizards, or rather Hasbro, which is the kind of meta company above them. And it looks pretty grim. It looks like they're taking back a lot of control that they previously surrendered over the last 20 years, and by doing so they're taking away some of the elements that have allowed the community to thrive and to keep the game going very strong through multiple editions. Now, at this point, I don't feel particularly interested in commenting extensively on the contents of the new leaked OGL, because we don't know if this is going to be the final OGL, and we don't know if it's even going to be legally practical to institute it in its current format. A lot of people are raising questions about how it clashes with some of the language in the current OGL. So I just don't feel particularly qualified or eager to get into that as a topic. I think there's a lot of other people in the community who are speaking very eloquently about this, and if I've done this right, I think a video should have popped up somewhere on the screen linking to another creator whose video I watched earlier on and who I think kind of brings a bit more of an in-depth and passionate explanation on the specifics of the OGL and why we need the old version and why the new version might be a problem. I don't want to get into that in too much detail. I want to address how the potential changes to the OGL will affect my channel and what I do on Patreon and the content I do for you guys. In the broadest strokes, it won't change a great deal for me. I am very lucky in that my content has never been particularly dependent on the Dungeons & Dragons IP as a whole. The rule sets, I mean, I do touch on them, but it won't be very hard to phase those things out if I have to. I mean, I think really the only thing I really rely on that's very D&D in my content is monster stat blocks and how I formulate them. But those things can be changed. I can swap some terminology around. It's not really going to make a huge difference for me. My content, especially on Patreon, has always been about adding flavor and ideas, not specific sort of D&D dependent systems. So for the most part, I will be fine. And I'm certainly not making anywhere near enough money to worry about having to pay royalties to them. So I don't even think I'd have to register a lot of the content that I make with Wizards if this new OGL goes through in its current format, which again, we don't know if it will. However, there is a larger point here, and that is that this is kind of a wake-up call, a reminder to me, and I think to many others, that Wizards, they're not our friend. They're not our friendly neighborhood gaming cafe. They're a big conglomerate company that is here to make profit, that's here to make money. And right now, they're looking out, I don't know if maybe they're considering a sale at some point in the future, or for whatever reason, they want to maximize their profits. And right now, it's the OGL. Tomorrow it could be people like me who have been cheekily using DM in their name on socials. I think this is the thing. I don't want to be dependent in any way on an IP. I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. I want to talk about TTRPGs in general. But I don't want to be in a situation where my whole thing is based on one brand. In this case, DM Inspo, Dungeon Master Inspo. I'm going to change the name. Originally, when I started my channel, it was called D&D Inspo, which was even more overt. I changed that to DM Inspo, but now we're going all the way. We're getting the D&D DM part out completely. This will also give me a chance to some extent, diversify what I do. It means that if later on I want to start talking about Call of Cthulhu or any other system out there that we want to talk about, I can do that, and it's not really a deviation because we're not specifically a D&D channel. Most of the content I talk about is sort of storytelling content. It's about how to have great TTRPG experiences and how to write great campaigns and adventures. I very rarely, especially in my videos, end up talking about specifically D&D related things. The big point I'm leading up to is that DM Inspo is no more. By the time you're watching this video, I will have changed the branding across almost all of my platforms from DM Inspo to Tales Arcane. Tales Arcane is going to be the new brand. It's going to be me and my content, my Patreon, my YouTube, Tales Arcane. I quite like it, it rolls off the tongue. Tales Arcane, for me, it's about storytelling, it's about fantasy. And the way I like to do storytelling and fantasy is through D&D and TTRPG as a genre. But I'm not restricted to that now, which I think is probably good going forward. I really want to build in a little bit of flexibility to my brand, just so that if at some point further up the road, you know, something changes radically in the same way that the OGL might be changing, I don't end up, you know, rocked by that. Thankfully for me, not a great deal will change. The name changes, the content will pretty much stay the same, and all of my plans to grow and expand what we're doing here for 2023 will proceed pretty much as normal. If the OGL goes ahead in its current format, and again, we don't know if it will, I may restructure how I present some elements of my Patreon content, but again, the core of everything I do is going to stay the same. One thing I do want to mention though is that Tales Arcane isn't really like a name you can call someone. DM Inspo does kind of sound like a name, and I've seen people in my comments refer to me as DM Inspo. I've even seen people on Reddit threads talk about DM Inspo as a person. But obviously, believe it or not, my real name isn't DM Inspo. My real name is Malcolm, or Mal, or whatever you want to call me. And from now on, I'm just going to go as Malcolm, or Mal, who creates content under the sort of creative name Tales Arcane. But obviously, I think that makes more sense than going forward being like DM Inspo. So, that's all I had to say. I think, though I am not impacted particularly at the moment by any changes to the OGL, I know a lot of people who will be, and I know a lot of people in this community who for the last 20 years have been keeping the community alive and growing, who are now considering their livelihoods potentially. So even though my content isn't changing, I encourage everyone to look into this, to stay abreast with the changing news as it comes out, to make your voices heard, to get in touch with any of the relevant companies, whether it's Wizards of the Coast or Hasbro, and make clear that you're not happy about this going forward, at least in its current form. I think the main thing is we need to obviously wait and see what the actual OGL 1.1 looks like when it comes out, but yeah, I may not be impacted, but a lot of people will be. The game as a whole will be. The creator community absolutely will be. So by all means, be angry about it and make your angry voices heard. But also just don't worry, my content is going to flow as normal. The only difference is DM Inspo is no more. I'm Malcolm, and this is Tales Arcane. Thank you for sticking with me so far, and I'm very excited for the future, whatever it may hold.